Welcome to Inside Games, the only gaming news show brave enough to still play Battlefield 2042. I just played it a few nights ago. Oh.
Yeah, Bruce is the bravest among, well, Bruce is the bravest out of all of us because you spent, what, $400 on it?
$800. It was a lot.
And there might be some more of that Bruce bravery going around. The game's got new content, the player counts are up. Even the 2042 subreddit, which was once in danger of shutting down completely due to toxicity, well, okay, it's Reddit. They're still not quite happy about anything, but hey, at least there's gameplay clips there too, in addition to people whining about stuff.
On one hand, nature is healing. On the other, the update only had one map, which recent rumors explain in saying that DICE only has a skeleton team working on the game and is only interested in fulfilling their obligations as cheaply and quickly as possible.
Yeah, that would certainly explain why the new update is so lacking in content, and why it didn't have any new content for Battlefield Portal, and why DICE also announced they won't make any content for Hazard Zone going forward.
Meanwhile, EA and DICE insist it's all hands on deck to make Battlefield 2042 the game it should have been when it launched last year. Now that the first season of content's out, it's a good time to check in on the game, see if EA and DICE have actually kept their word.
For that, we turn to our resident staff Battlefield dramaticist, Charlotte. Charlotte, what's the battle tea today?
Well, if it's battle tea, it's probably arrived late, half full, and glitched out of the cup 30 seconds into drinking it. Worst Jersey Mike's experience ever. When it comes to Battlefield 2042, it's a case of he said, she said regarding the game's current development status, or rather, he said, giant corporation that has a history of abandoning badly launched games said, you know what we mean. The he in this case is games reporter Jeff Grubb, who described the current development status as abandoned ship time, claiming that DICE is just trying to fulfill the 4-season delivery requirements of its Ultimate Edition. According to Grubb, this is because EA and DICE are already in pre-production on the next Battlefield and are moving development resources to it accordingly.
Well, you gotta admit, that series of events sounds mighty plausible given how the whole game is going.
Yeah, and maybe it does, but then EA did something unprecedented. They actually responded. Shortly after Grubb's statements, EA reached out to him, labeling his statements as untrue, claiming that there's a significant team across studios working on improving the game.
Now, that's actually not the last stop on the Battlefield 2042 Whistle Stop Apology Tour either. GamesIndustry.biz interviewed DICE General Manager Rebecca Kutas, who reiterated DICE's dedication to 2042 in even more extreme terms.
When asked about the possibility of a new Mirror's Edge in the near future, Kutas replied, quote, "We are only focusing on Battlefield 2042. There is no time for anything else, and this is what we want to do. In 3 years, we want to be the first-person shooter powerhouse that DICE deserves to be, and that is what we're going for."
Kutas didn't really leave it at that either, saying that DICE didn't abandon 2042 because, quote, "we couldn't do that to our players, and we couldn't do that to ourselves." She described the feeling as being similar to revenge, but noted that that word was too strong in English, before concluding that we owe it to our players.
These are welcome statements to hear for sure if you're a Battlefield fan like me, but what if you're looking for an inexpensive, reliable VPN? What then?
Well, then you'll want to hear from our sponsor today, Private Internet Access.
Inside Games is brought to you by PrivateInternetAccess.com. PIA hides your online activity from your internet service provider, network administrator, and government censors. That's what a VPN does. Private Internet Access is also the world's most transparent VPN provider with over 30 million downloads. They never record or store user data, and they have a no logs policy. The VPN is 100% open source, and the code is public. So anyone can take a look under the hood and examine just how secure and private the service actually is. Almost no other VPN is actually that transparent. They use world-class next-gen server infrastructure in over 84 countries, meaning you get a secure, reliable VPN connection anytime, anywhere. Private Internet Access is available for all platforms: Windows, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and tons more. You can also use one Private Internet Access subscription to protect up to 10 devices at the same time. So most of the VPNs support fewer connections, so you get a lot more bang for your buck when you choose PIA. And of course, really fast gaming speeds, DDoS protection, and unlimited bandwidth for the ultimate gaming experience on PIA. So to get the Private Internet Access VPN, go to privateinternetaccess.com/insidegames. The discount there, if you click the link, it's $2.11 a month, 82% off. If you go to privateinternetaccess.com/insidegames for the very best in VPN. Hey, thank you, Private Internet Access. Okay, last we left our story, DICE General Manager Rebecca Kutas just told us that DICE is all in on Battlefield 2042. But it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny, does it, Charlotte?
Oh, about as well as me in improv class. Aw, I'm good at improv.
Yeah, you are.
Kutas' statements not only contradicted Jeff Grubb's abandoned ship vision of Battlefield 2042 development, but also his much more reasonable claim that the next Battlefield is already in development. There's not a lot of room left for interpretation when Kutas says, "There's no time for anything else." If Battlefield games take about 3 years to develop and pre-production hasn't even begun on the next game, that means DICE won't ship the next Battlefield game or any game until apparently like 2025, and then another single map until 2026. All this following a launch that had disappointing sales according to EA themselves.
So we're to believe basically that after a dud of a launch, all of DICE is working on Battlefield 2042, a game that probably didn't bring in much revenue because of the disappointing sales, instead of actually working on another game that might bring in revenue. It's really hard to imagine that DICE would operate that way as a business, because they have to make money, and it's even harder to imagine that EA would be okay with allowing the entire studio to burn payroll to make updates for a game that most of the FPS world has already moved on from.
There's also a much more obvious logical disconnect here. If all of DICE were working on Battlefield 2042, which is to say 714 employees according to Wikipedia, surely they could have made 2 maps rather than the one?
Sounds like an entitled gamer right there.
Okay, all right, I bought the Ultimate Edition.
The best speculation we can offer there, I mean, so not every one of the 714 employees is in like Frostbite modeling tools making maps, right? But that's still a lot of people. The best speculation we can offer is that a portion of those developers were dedicated to bug fixing and general game improvements versus developing new content for the game's first season update. Kutas also mentions internal restructuring following the launch of Battlefield 2042, so that likely had an effect on the team's overall productivity as well.
The situation here is reminiscent of a few games in the past. Charlotte, you know them, you love them. Which are they?
The old chestnuts of YouTube views, Anthem and Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk is more a case study in developers recouping after bad launches. CD Projekt dedicated developer resources to fixing the game on top of reorganizing their development pipeline. As a result, Cyberpunk 2077 expansions are coming along much more slowly than they did for CDPR's previous game, The Witcher 3. The only difference here, though, is that CD Projekt isn't out here saying they're only working on Cyberpunk. They've already announced another AAA Witcher game in addition to at least one story expansion to 2077.
In Anthem's case, you know, we heard a lot of the same unequivocal support from both EA and BioWare. Every update about the game contained actual complete lack of real game content, and instead stuffed to the brims with promises about how dedicated everyone at EA and BioWare are to the game, until the exact second they weren't, and then it was all done.
What about 2.0? What happened to Anthem 2.0?
I'm sorry, it's gone. Even EA acknowledged that DICE is pretty good at massaging their audience back into a good place after bad launch. EA CEO Andrew Wilson acknowledged that explicitly during an EA investor call back in February, saying that DICE has done this dance, quote, a number of times now.
We're in that phase where everyone wants to believe in the future, and DICE is feeding us the lines we need to hear. So yeah, at the end of it, we have two narratives, basically. EA and DICE are insisting in escalating terms that DICE will fling themselves into an active volcano if it makes Battlefield 2042 just 1% better. Meanwhile, Battlefield 2042's underwhelming content update and general business practicalities would beg to differ with that.
In the end, while we can appreciate Kutas' passion in recovering DICE's reputation, or maybe just PR, we kind of hope her version of events is not true. If it is, then that means the entire company is making content impossibly slowly for a game that has underperformed terribly, and they have no other projects going on right now.
I don't want that. I want DICE to make games people buy. I want them to make good games.
Yeah, me too. I love DICE.
I like from like the pride perspective of going back and fixing or updating an old game. But yeah, we have yet to really see the action, the evidence of that. So it's messy. But what do you guys think? When you in the audience, what do you think? Should bad games be saved after the fact, or I don't know, tossed out like yesterday's underwear so that teams can move on to the next thing?
God, you want there to be a middle ground, right? Doesn't that seem logical? Like, we don't want it abandoned, but it also didn't sell very well, so you should go on to make a fully fleshed out and put together game at release. But like, I don't know. It would be nice to see a little bit more support, but obviously they're working on other stuff. Like, They simply must. They're one of the largest developers in the world with a huge IP that flopped on its last outing. Or, yeah, well, I'll say flopped. Yeah, you know. So, I mean, come on. It's just like... It's like the worst kind of lip service that can just be pointed back to 4 months later as a complete fabrication. So we'll hope that they, I don't know, patch out another map in once more. I don't know.
I am the biggest DICE fan probably of the three of us, and I'm a huge DICE fan and have been for years. This doesn't sound logical. Well, Lawrence is right. It doesn't make any sense that they're like, no, we are making Battlefield better right now, and then they release one fucking map. Like, what do you, I mean, like, that's ridiculous. Again, the game is in a much better place. I just played it. It's really, really fun. It's way better than it has been, and it got new content, got new vehicles, etc. Like, that's great. But for all the people that spent $80 on Ultimate Edition or whatever I spent on it, because I love supporting DICE, it would be crazy to just drop Battlefield and then move on to another Battlefield, which is probably what they're doing, because then I just blew $80 on a game that they're barely going to maintain. So that's going to burn me for the next Battlefield that I want to buy. I don't know if I'm going to pre-order the Ultimate Edition like I did for 2042.
I feel like the tricky part is that 2042 is kind of exactly in the middle of maybe it's too broken to worry about, but also is kind of salvageable, so it's not really a clear call. But yeah, Charlotte, to what you were saying, it's kind of the middle ground idea. There are some games you play that obviously were shipped a little too early, but there's really something there. And, you know, some smoothing out can get it there. Cyberpunk is often cited as that sort of game. 2042, awfully close. And also, I was really excited for a modern, near-future Battlefield game again. I love Battlefield 4, so I was hoping that this could become, you know, the sequel to Battlefield 4, basically. That's why I was hoping DICE would stick with the game, but at this point, having seen their first update, to me, that was the, you know, the prove it or leave it behind moment. And it again seemed like they're kind of straddling the fence too. They're doing just enough, but they're not actually leaving it behind to make another better Battlefield game. So I just hope that by doing halfsies, they're not sapping resources away from the next Battlefield that might actually be the good one. Hopefully they've learned their lesson, but again, like Andrew Wilson said, the cycle has turned a couple times and it continues to turn again. Although at least this time, at least it didn't make money for EA. So hopefully some things have changed.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, thanks again to our sponsor, Private Internet Access. Go to privateinternetaccess.com/insidegames for the discount on that VPN. And hey, while we're thanking our supporters, we have some patrons that would never feed us PR spin like Rebecca Coutot. They would never do that. Dan Halloran, Nathaniel Jameson, Dylan Hiley, Eddie Thel, Keita White, and Xander.
And while you're at it, Bruce, I got a few patrons that always give us the good PR spin. Jacob, Jonathan Lanowski, Mason Hoover, Tito 007, Brown Sugar, and O'Rala. Thank you all very, very much.